Hi everyone, this is Sita Snyder. Um, this lecture is about running different types of SQL queries to retrieve data from your database. Let's first review the basic structure of a SQL query. So we have talked about select and select distinct, and the select query basically the select statement tells the system what you want to display in your results, where that data is to be retrieved from. So let's go back to our SQL server and see how this is accomplished. Click on new query, so the new query window will open, and so I have written my query, select title. So we basically want to show the title of each employee from the table employee. And if I click on execute, so what we're having here is an invalid object name. And the reason why is because up here, I am operating from the master database, and we really want to go to the database that we are where this employee table currently reside, and my employee table currently resides in HM444 FA16 database. So I must choose that database in order to for the system to find the table that I'm referencing in my query. So if I execute again, it will bring me the results that I'm looking for. Again, as I covered in a previous lecture, title, you can also rename the column of the results. So instead of displaying title, I might want to call it title as employee position and run that query, and now my column title is changed to employee position. Okay, so we also talk about the distinct command. So instead of having multiple titles shown in the query, I only want to display them once. So I can type in distinct. Oops. So by typing distinct, it is only going to return each value once. So there is no duplication there. In addition to specifying the data elements that we want to bring back from our query, we can also limit the result. So we can apply a search criteria by using the where statement. So it is meant to filter the query results so that the result will only bring those data that meets the search criteria. So let's take a look at how we can do this. So from here, for example, I want to pull employee name. So here what I have is select employee first name, last name from the table employee, where employee first name equals to John. And notice here that my system will not like that. So make sure that you use the symbol that is right below the double quote key. So you only, instead of using the double quote, you're using the single quote to specify a nchar type of database, or excuse me, of data type. And if you do not have that, it's not going to work. So if I run that query, it's going to bring back John Gaon and John Hammer because it meets the criteria or the search criteria of the first name John. Now see what happens when I take the um, the quote out, and it is not going to find it because it is treating this as a integer type of data type, and of course this is in contradiction to the data type that we have for first name, which is the um, anchor character data type. So run it again, and it's going to bring you the result. Notice here that it does not distinguish between the uppercase and lowercase letters. So I can type in John with uppercase letter J or with lowercase letter J, and it will still bring me the result. So notice here that I have the employee first name equals John. And what if we want to pull employee first name that does not or that do not equal to John? So let's say we want to pull everybody else except those whose first name is John. So I can do that, and this symbol is equivalent to not equal to. Okay, so if I run this, as you can see here, it is going to, if you go to J, it's going to pull everybody except those employees with the first name of John. So there is no John here. And the same things if I go, okay, so let's say the first name is Abby. So if I type in Abby, and with this exclusion criteria, it is not going to pull Abby. So now Abby is no longer shown in the query results. So let's go over the syntax again. If you want to set the criteria to equals to, you use the equal sign. And if you want it to be not equal to, you will use the symbol, this back arrow and forward arrow together to indicate not equals to. And you can also do this by using the command not in. And let's take a look how we can implement this in our query. So here we have well, let's stay with Abby. I think you will see the illustration here. So instead of using the not equal sign, we're going to use not, oops, not in. Okay, and when you use not in is a function. So you will have to put it in parentheses like that. And then if you run this, as you can see, there is no Abby in the result. So let's say you want to exclude Andrew. As you can see, there are two Andrews in the result. So let's, before we do that, let's pull all of the employee data. So I will say employee, and if I run this query, I will have 50 rows. Okay, so in other words, I have 50 set of data for different employees. And as you can see, data, the third and fourth data, or the third and fourth row, actually the fourth and the fifth, excuse me, are for Andrew. So if I type in not Andrew, of course, if I can type, that would help. Now, as you can see here, I have two separate queries. One is this query, the other one is this other query. I want to keep this query here. So, but what happens is when I run my query, I need to be selective. I need to be clear to the system as to which query I want to run. So in this case, I want to run this query. So I would highlight it first and then click execute. And it will pull the employee first name, employee last name, and of course, Andrew is gone from the result because we have excluded Andrew from this query. Now, since I am on the topic of running separate queries, I can run these two queries together actually. So if I do not highlight anything and I just simply run execute, as you can see here, I have two result windows. One is for the first one, which is for this one, and this is the result right here. And this other window, result window, is for the second query. So you can sort of compare the result from both queries if you want to. And depending on which window you activate, it will show the result. So like for example, right now, this window is activated because that's where my cursor is. So it will say I have 50 rows of data that came back from this particular query. But when I click here, it will show that I have 48 rows that came back from as a result of running this particular query. So, but the number of some of multiple queries that you can run at the same time is limited. And I think if you have too many, the system is going to say, it's going to give you an error message. So as long as you have, I seriously, I do not know how many. I'm assuming 2, 3 would be fine. So if you have 2, 3 queries that you want to run at the same time, that would be fine. Okay, so so that is how you do select from with the filter where either equal or not equal or not in. Okay, so that's for that. In your where statement, you can also have multiple search criteria, and you can do this by using and or using or statement. So for instance, here the first one is to pull data where employee first name equals John and employee last name equal Hammer. So these two conditions have to be met in order for the system to for this statement to be true. In a programming language, you have the true or false type of condition, and for this to for the database to bring back any data, these two conditions have to be met. So the first name has to be John and the last name has to be Hammer. If the first name is John, the last name is something else, it's not going to bring that particular result back. So let's see how we can run this query in our SQL Server. So here I have my query already written. So select employee first name, employee last name. So the query results is going to show two separate columns. The first name is first name. The second one is employee last name. And it is going to retrieve the data from the employee table. And the condition is that the first name must be John and the second name must be Hammer. So if I run this query we are going to get the result employee first name, employee last name, John Hammer. So let's say, let's run the query where the first name is John. So I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to just run this query just to see how many Johns we have as the first name, just to show you. In fact, I'm going to run these together. Okay, so now we have two separate results. The first name is from running this query with the search criteria both John and Hammer for the first name and last name respectively. And the second one, which is here, is to run a query and pull everybody whose first name is John. As you can see, there are actually two Johns in the database in the employee table. However, only this one meets the criteria for John and Hammer, and therefore when we do the end um, where statement, it is going to eliminate John Gayon because the last name does not match the Hammer search criteria that we have identified. So let's see what happens if you type in, instead of and, we are going to use or statement. Okay, so let's run this query. And so what you have is, now you have three results or three data rows of data from running this query. As you can see here, the first name criteria is John, so these two meet the criteria of the first one. But then for the last name Hammer, you have two people by the name of Hammer. So the query is going to fetch both data set because it meets the criteria of Hammer. So it is evaluating the condition differently depending on whether or not you use the and or statement. So and, both criteria have to be met. If you use or, either one of the criteria, if it is met, it is going to pull that particular record.